Hi there, it's Ramzi. If you followed my video on how to systemize your agency and productize it through ClickUp, you've probably seen that I talked about the 4 pillars of an automated agency. In that video, I've talked about how to set up a documentation, proper templates, and dependencies for your agency delivery. Now you can go watch it, and you have to go watch it before you watch this one. I recommend you to understand and to build that system first before you enter into what we're going to talk about today, which is creating batches in your day-to-day in ClickUp. Now, the batch methodology is a method that I've somehow created by inspiring myself from Agile methodology and Lean and working in cycles of 1 week. Now, if you follow through this video, I'm going to show you how this method works, how you can set it up in your ClickUp workspace, and how you can create a dashboard to track your project delivery in ClickUp. If you manage to use this method, you'll make your agency a delivery machine. Everything will be clear for you as the manager or as the agency founder, and you'll know exactly what your team is working on. Now, let's go and dive a little bit deeper into what the batch methodology is about. It's easy to remember what batch stands for. It's basically about breaking down, automating, time blocking, consolidating, and handling your tasks. This 5-step method should let you automatically or semi-automatically plan your project in your weeks in ClickUp. Now, I say in your weeks because this method works in cycles. It's basically a little bit like Agile, if you know about what Agile is, but in a much more lightweight version. What it consists of is having slots on Mondays and Friday for working together, and slots from Tuesday to Thursday for focus. On Friday afternoon, as a manager, as a founder, you will focus on planning your team's batch, your now batch, what your team has to work on for the next week. You'll spend some time looking at what you have to focus on, and you're going to plan your tasks for the next week. Then moving on to Monday morning, you're going to have a 1 to 4 hours meeting, depending on your company size, with your team to look over each of these tasks, everything you've planned in your now batch, and you're going to make sure that it's sizable, that it has an estimate, and that it's not too much workload for your team. So you're going to work on estimating this with your team. That's going to bring us to Fridays. As you can see, in between Monday and Friday, there's no team meetings. There might be some client meetings on Monday afternoon, but there's not going to be any more team meetings. Everything else should be handled async. And that's how ClickUp's powerful. And ClickUp lets you do that. ClickUp is very powerful in using comments and assignees and the inbox to work async and to work remotely together. You need to make sure that you understand these features. There's actually dedicated videos for the ClickUp inbox and for the ClickUp notifications that you need to watch to understand how to work async in ClickUp during Tuesday to Thursday. Now comes Friday on the morning, you're just going to review with your team the current batch and make sure that everything has been done and bring it to the previous batch. And on Friday afternoon, your team is going to review that batch and plans the batch for the next week. So either you do it with your team or you do it yourself. And then Friday afternoon, again, you're going to plan your now batch. And on Monday morning of week 3, you're going to talk about it, and so on and so forth. As you can see, this method works in cycles of 1 week. Now you can totally change that cycle. You can make it 2 weeks. I recommend going between 1 and 4 weeks, not further than 4, not less than 1. I think 1 is a good balance for a very fast-paced agency. If you're a little bit slower paced and if you have bigger projects and things that are more at scale, you can bring things to 2 weeks. This really depends on your company size. The bigger the company, the larger the batches. Now, this method leverages 2 custom fields in ClickUp and ClickUp automations. The first custom field is going to be the batch custom field. And basically, it's a custom field which consists of 6 values: previous, now, next, after, someday, and maybe. These values basically mean that if a task is in the now batch, it has to be done this week. Next means in 2 weeks. After means maybe the upcoming quarter, it's still unclear. And then someday, upcoming year. The further you go, the less clear it is. And you only have to automate what has to be done this week and next week. I'm going to show you how to in ClickUp right after. And the second feature it leverages is the points custom field. So we're going to create a custom field that basically is a unit of effort that lets you know if you've given too much work or not enough to your team members. Now, 1 point means it's very little work, 2 points is average, and 3 points is a lot of work. And by using this method, you're going to be able to estimate your tasks much faster than if you were using time estimates. I'll show you that right after. Now, if you understand how these two work together, we'll have assignees, we'll have start and end dates of our week's batch, and we'll have points. That will let us do some capacity planning in ClickUp. We'll be able to know if we gave too much work or not enough to our team in ClickUp. This method is excellent, in my opinion, compared to classic project planning, because I realized companies very rarely fill the start and end dates and very rarely fill the time estimates. And with this method, it seems more realistic to do some capacity planning. I've actually been using it with my team, and we've been using the batch method, and it's worked tremendously into planning our batches of 1 week together. And every week we're hit the spot better and better because there's the right amount of work per person. Now, what I love about this method is the planning, it's the estimates, it's the automation it allows, and we're going to show you that right now. And it's the clarity. I know exactly what we have to focus on this week. And as an agency founder, it's essential that you do too, that you know exactly what's to focus on this week, next week, and sometime after. It's part of the Consolidate part we've seen above, and I'm going to show you how to set that up. If you manage to set this method properly, the benefits are going to be tremendous. Trust me. And I will show you right now how to set up that batch method in ClickUp. Let's start off by breaking down your project. I have a project right here that I've created for Wayne Enterprises. It's a client that I have. And here you have some milestones, some subtasks, some dependencies. I've broken down my project. I made sure that my project is broken down into smaller subtasks. Let's get back here and have a look at our subtasks. All of these are sizable. We can add them to our batches. Now let's focus on what's to do next. We have to automate and use templates and automations to speed up planning. We have our whole roadmap that's used as the template. We even have descriptions in our templates. So everything has been templated so that each time we start a project, it comes up with the exact right structure. If you want to know more about templating your project roadmap in ClickUp, I've talked about that in the previous video, how to productize your agency. Now we're going to focus on how to automate that scheduling. But before I set up my automation, I'm going to display the fields I've told you about, the batch and the points field. Let's hide some of these fields. I don't need them anymore. I'm going to display two fields. One field called batch that I've already created, and one field called points that I've already created as well. Now we have to create those the first time. And basically it's a simple drop-down field with these values: previous, now, next, after, someday, maybe. And the points field is just 3 values, 1, 2, 3. Fairly easy. It's just very, very simple. And I'm going to show you how we can automate this right now. We're going to go into the delivery space level, and I want to make sure that my automations are created at the highest level possible. Because if you create them only in the client level, you'll have to copy and paste it. Whereas I want to set it up once and for all. So let's go into our automations. I'm going to show you the automations I have right here. This automation basically says, when my batch is set up at now, please change the start date to 3 days after the trigger date and 7 days after the trigger date for the due date. Why this? Why 3 days after to 7 days after? Because I'm planning everything on Fridays. I want this to be planned for next Monday till next Friday. So that means that's 3 days after till 7 days after. Now you need to adjust this depending on your frequency. Say you're using 2 weeks batches, maybe you want to do 3 days to 14 days. It really depends on you on how you want to use this method. Now I'm going to call this current batch automation and click save. And I'll just duplicate this one. I'm going to say when the value is next batch, then please change it to 14 days after trigger date, because I want to move it to 2 weeks further. So this one is called next batch. That's my second automation. My third and final automation is going to bring everything that's done to the previous batch. That way, I don't have to care about moving things to the previous batch. So once status is closed, set custom field batch to previous. Let's call this one previous batch. And we have our automations ready: current batch, next batch, previous batch. These ones are automations that I've created for systemizing my agency. I've talked about it in the previous video, but you don't have to mind those for the sake of this video. We have automated our planning for our current batch, next batch, and our previous batch. Let's see how it works. If we get back into our client project right here, and we decide to plan things into time, That brings me to the third step of the batch methodology, the time blocking. We're gonna move our tasks to the correct batch. We're gonna say this one is the now batch. It's already been done actually, so let's move it to the now batch. This one is now as well, this one too. And we can even go into the subtask and add them to the now batch as well. And as you can see, because we're Friday, it moved everything to the Friday. So everything is planned for the 3rd of June to 28th. Everything is planned accordingly. And if I decide to change this one as well, let's move it. It will be planned to the 28th of June. Now, because there's dependencies and some automations going on, the start date is actually not Monday, but it's fine. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the due date is next Friday, because I'm going to show you how you can tweak this in capacity planning later with the workload view. We have our batch for what's to do now, and we can go a little bit further and let's add those into the next batch. These ones are to do into the next batch, and this one is maybe to do after, and this one someday. Perfect. So we have planned our project right now. We've time blocked it. It has start dates and end dates, and we're going to get back into here and consolidate our view. We're going to view each batch in separate groups. And to do so, you just have to edit two settings in ClickUp. First off, you're going to put your subtasks as separate tasks. And second, you're going to group not by status, but by batch. And that way, as you can see, everything is layered by batch. Now we're going to hide the done tasks. We don't need them anymore. Now, as you can see, everything has been grouped into batches, into groups of 1 week. And that's the power of this method. As a manager, we really want to focus on what to do right now, what's to do this week, what's our priority. And this view can be in a client level, but it can also be at the whole delivery level or in the folder for all the ongoing projects. That's the power of this method. You can consolidate your current batch, your now batch, across as many clients as you want. Now, as you can see, we've consolidated everything, and that brings us to the last task, which is a handle. We have to estimate and execute tasks within each batch. Let's get back here and estimate our tasks first. As you can see, there's this point unit right here, and I've told you how it works. 1 point is little, 2 points is average, and 3 points is a lot of work. I'm going to add my points right here. Say this one is 1, this one is actually a little bit more complex, this one is very complex, and this one is super hard. We're going to assign some tasks to Diane. She'll have to work on that client for this week. Now I've added some estimates, I've added some start and end dates, and I have assignees on my task. As you can see, it was pretty fast through this methodology, and it's very clear what I have to focus on this week. Let's add a workload view and manage my workload through the batch method. I've added this view, and if we move on to the next week, we're going to have to tweak a few settings right here. I'm going to go into customize, workload options, and turn off weekends, and turn on the location of my task and the parent task names. That way, I'll see exactly which client I'm working on and where I am, which type of project it is. Let's get back into customize and into workload. And this time, I'm not going to use time estimates for capacity planning, but I'm going to use points. And as you can see right here, we have a few tasks and we have a few people, and each of these people have some tasks assigned to them. And actually the capacity on each and every one is 10 points. 10 points is a good capacity because 3 points is about a day, and 3 times 3 is 9. That's very close to 3 days worth of work, and we want to focus on actual productive focus days. And as we've said, Monday and Friday are for meeting, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are for work, and maybe a little bit more. So that's why 10 points is a very accurate, very good unit of time, and it's easy to remember as well, easy to calculate. So say Diane has 10 points, Lucas, Ramzi has 10 points, everyone has 10 points. The problem we have right here is that, as we can see, we've assigned too much tasks to Diane, and we have to move at least 5 points to someone else. What we can do, because Lucas has less workload, is drag and drop this task and add them and reassign them to Lucas. By doing this, we'll make sure that everyone's in green and the workload is balanced. It's very simple, very standardized, because everything starts on Mondays, finishes on Friday, and from there, it's about trust. Each and everyone handles the tasks the way they want. They can do everything on Tuesday, everything on Wednesday. They can wrap things up on Thursday. What matters is that by Friday morning, you can just do a review and close up all the tasks. Now, say we're Friday. If we go into our list view right here, All we have to do is close up our tasks and our automation should move them to the previous batch. Let's close up this task and see how it works. Now, all I have to do is display my closed tasks, and as you can see, they've been moved to the previous batch. So let's do the same for those. Workflow, perfect. These ones as well. And they should all move one by one. Now, it takes a few seconds for the ClickUp automation to work out, but if you give it a few minutes or if you refresh your screen, they should all be moved to the batch up. So let's open one of those, see if it's refreshed. Everything has been moved to the previous batch and our automation worked. Everything was handled in time. Now, if a task hasn't been handled in time and it's delayed, there's an automation in my ClickUp workspace, which basically flags it as delayed. In my delivery space, I will just create an automation that whenever the due date arrives, it changes the tag to late. And that way, as you will see right after, I'll be able to create a dashboard to track those late tasks. As I've told you, what I love about this method is that not only it applies to a client, but we can also bring this view up to the space level or to all our ongoing projects. If I get into my list view, into the ongoing folder, everything is grouped by batch as well. And we have all our projects across all our clients. Now, if we go into the customized settings, we can even display the task location and the subparent task names so that we know exactly what we're talking about. So for example, these projects in the previous batch are for Gringotts Wizarding Bank. This one is for Wayne. And for now, we have to work on these little tasks for clients. And if I wanted to bring, for example, this task into the now batch and this one as well, and this one, okay, for these clients, it will be rescheduled accordingly and the due date will be reflected, start date will be reflected, everything will be rescheduled accordingly. And all I have to do is calculate my points and do some estimations and go into my workload view and handle the capacity planning of my team across the whole project. Make sure you create this batch view at the right level and make sure you create the workload view at the right level. Maybe you want to handle your workload per client, or you want to handle your workload per team, or just through an overall level like this one right here in the ongoing folder. I hope this method helps you out. I really love it. It almost puts my project planning on automate, and I have a really clear view on what's to handle this week through this batch method. Now, you don't have to use this method, but according to me, it's the most efficient way to handle capacity planning and to know if you're going overboard or not with your team. And to go even further, I'm going to show you one last thing, which is a dashboard for you to track the best practices of this method in ClickUp. Let's create a dashboard. I'll actually create it right here in my ongoing folder and add a view, which is a dashboard view. And we're going to start from scratch and track 4 metrics. The first one we're going to track is the tasks that are in current batch but are not assigned. If we go into task list, we're just going to select our location, which is the ongoing projects. We don't need to group our tasks by status. We're going to include the subtasks. We want to show the task in multiple lists and the breadcrumbs as well. And here we're going to have a filter where the batch is now, and we don't have an assignee. So the assignee is not set. Then we're going to call this one unassigned task. Let's add our card. And from there, with a glimpse, we can see the tasks that don't have an assignee. I'm following best practices because all my tasks have been assigned, but say I go into my current batch and I forget to assign a few, they should pop up in my dashboard. And as you can see, they're here. I have to make sure that I add an assignee for them to disappear. Now let's do the same thing for the tasks that don't have estimate. I'll call it no estimate task. And on this one, I'll change the filter a little bit. I'll go into the settings, and the filter is not batch is now, and the filter is assignee is not set. Its point is not set. I'll click apply and save. And from there, again, we will see tasks with no estimates. We don't have any, that's perfect. But if I were to go back into my list and remove some points from these, they should pop up right in my dashboard. So we have some tasks without estimates. You have to make sure you add estimates, and you can quickly turn on that point custom field from here. That way, if we were to add a point to this should disappear from our dashboard if I just refresh it. Amazing. Now, last metrics we want to track, we want to see what's overdue in the current batch over time, and we want to see how many points we have in the current batch over time. Now, let's add those. You're going to add a card, and this one is a bit different. It's going to be a line chart, and it's going to be called overdue tasks just going to pick the same location. At the time range, I'm going to choose a rolling period of 30 days and just a sum of my tasks. And as a filter, I'm going to pick due date is overdue and a nested filter where the batch is our current batch. I'll click apply and I'll just add my card. And right here, I'll have my overdue task over time. Now, it's not really clear because they're grouped by status. Now, to make it clearer, we're not group it and we're going to click save. And as you can see, it should display the amount of tasks that are overdue. Now, this should move over time. So as you have more overdue tasks, you will see that line will increase or decrease over time. And with that setting, you'll be able to know if you have more and more overdue tasks or not, and if your team is handling the delivery properly. Now, the last card I want to show you is going to be the total points in the current batch. So let's duplicate this one, and I'm going to remove this from my filter. I just want the current batch and tweak a few settings. I'll click my gear, and all I want to see in my axis over time is the points. I'll go into drop downs and select points, and that way, if I click save, I should be able to see the amount of points in the current batch. This is increasing over time. If I want to have a linear view, I can just select stacked right here. This is slightly nicer. I like it. And if you see this increasing and your team remaining the same, there must be a problem. It means you have more and more tasks stacking up in the current batch. And it should be an indicator that you need to make your team more efficient, hire, create processes, or do something. Because this should be stable, or it would be because you hired more people and you have more team's capacity. Let's rename this one points per batch. This is a first insight at your actual team's capacity, your actual team's delivery. If the overdue tasks increases, it's a bad sign. If the points per batch increases and your team increases, it makes sense. If the points per batch increases and your team stays the same, or your client inflow or your revenue stays the same, that means there's a problem of delivery. Now, I hope this method helps you out. It took me a while to create it, to refine it, and it's still work in progress, but it's already a great way to quickly handle your tasks. Again, you break them down into smaller tasks, you automate it in your now and in your next batches, you time block everything, and you consolidate with this grouped by batch view that I've showed you, and you handle everything in one go, and you execute everything by assigning and handling things with capacity planning. If you use this method, you'll have a clearer view on your team's capacity, on your agency delivery, and you will probably increase your team's productivity and efficiency using ClickUp. Now, I hope you watched both videos on how to systemize and how to operate your agency in ClickUp. This is very insightful and super important to combine both, because if you manage to create the right system with the correct operations, I can assure you your agency productivity and your delivery is going to go up by miles and miles and miles, and you're going to reach 7, 8, 9 figures. If you want to know more about this, and if you want to save yourself time for setting everything up yourself, I can help you out, and you can book a discovery call with me where we'll go through your agency processes, your challenges, what we can automate, either in ClickUp or with external software to save you time and double your agency productivity. Have a look at my agency series, book a discovery call, or get my ClickUp Master course. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Until then, stay productive.